This is the Ford Focus ST, and it's hugely important. You see, while Europe's been getting all the hot versions of the Focus, the RS, and so on, we've been left with nothing. Nothing hot and nothing fast. At least nothing since the SVT, which lasted until 2004. But let's not dwell on the past, as bitter as it may be. The ST badge on the back of this car stands for Sport Technologies. And to that end, we have a turbo 2-liter engine, we have around 20 pounds of boost, we have 252 horsepower and 270 pound-feet of torque, and we only have a manual transmission. Now let's get started. Now when you have a front drive car that makes 270 pound-feet of torque, you have to be pretty mindful of how to launch it. The best way to launch the Focus ST we found was without a lot of wheel spin. Release the clutch at about 2,000 RPM, ride out first gear, and shift hard into second. A lot of power through first, and if you spin into second, that's a good sign. You'll hit 60 in second gear, 5.9 seconds. And you get to listen to a rather wonderful engine sound. Quarter mile arrives 14.6 seconds at 95.9 miles an hour. And now for a 60 to 0 brake test. Took the Focus just 112 feet to stop from 60. So now we begin the figure 8 test with the Ford Focus ST. This thing is a riot around our handling course. We have very nicely balanced steering, a lot of control through the front end, and lifting off the throttle mid-corner produces these big rotations. You can put this car anywhere you want it on this handling track. If you turn in hard enough, you'll go into a drift. But because the car's front-wheel drive, you can just keep your steering angle set and balance the throttle, and that keeps the rear end in check. This thing is a lot of fun. Just turn it hard enough, the back end comes right around, you set your steering angle, start applying throttle, and that's it. If I do have a complaint though, it's that this car on corner exit is kind of difficult. You have to be very careful with the throttle. We have an electronic differential that doesn't feel like it's doing its job. When you get on the throttle out of a corner, you end up spinning if you're too aggressive. It takes pretty careful throttle use. I'll take that if it means I can drive a chassis this balanced. This thing is just an absolute delight. You don't think much about counter steer in a front wheel drive car, but this makes you consider it sometimes. So the first thing you notice about the Focus ST on the road is, one, it sounds fabulous inside. The second thing you notice is torque steer. It's especially apparent in the lower gears, first and second particularly, and it's kind of funny. They've done a lot of work to try to quell the torque steer with the brakes, with the steering system, which I'll come back to in a second, but it's still there. It's such that it'll actually turn the car to the right pretty aggressively if you're not careful with your throttle. Now, I think that's okay, because when you have 270 pound-feet of torque driving the front tires, you probably should know that's the case. Fortunately, when you're in third gear or so and you're charging hard, it's not that big of an issue. The work that we've done though on the steering system, which is electronically assisted, I think what they've done to try to get rid of the torque steer might have also taken a bit of the feel out of the wheel itself. That's not to say this is a bad steering system, but it just isn't relaying a lot of feedback from the road through the rim. We talked about the steering and what it's doing to help get rid of torque steer. The brakes are actually working a bit on the car as well. When you turn in aggressively, you'll actually feel a bit of pulsation on the inside wheel, helping the car turn in. It's a little strange at first, but in practice it's rather nice. Couple that with a chassis that's pretty aggressive. You can lift off this car and it'll actually do a little bit of yaw that helps you turn in and change your line. And it becomes a very fun thing to drive. And even though there isn't a lot of feel through this steering wheel, it's still nice to throw the car around, and that goes for the rest of the controls. The shifter, the knob itself is okay, but the throws are very nice and positive. It clunks very nicely from gear to gear. The brake pedal, especially on the initial bite, is very sharp. It feels good, and so does the clutch pedal. It's a very small, tight engagement area. I'm disappointed with the styling of the interior. It's a bit too much, a bit too alien spaceship, especially some of the graphics along the gauges up there. They look, well, cheap. The thing is, with the sound this car makes, with the quick steering, with the eager engine that, again, sounds great, it makes for a car that's really, really, really fun to push. You take the way this car sounds, the way how aggressive its chassis is, the nice use of the controls, and you have a car that's really, really fun to throw around. You have a genuine hot hatch that is really enjoyable, one you want to stay on the limits of and feel like you can comfortably drive on the limits of all the time. It may be a little too aggressive, but I'll take that over a little bit too conservative. This is, let's face it, a kind of an immature car, but that's okay. The world needs more of those. I very much enjoy this car, and Ford deserves credit for tuning it so aggressively. Its styling is a little too immature, but when you consider everything from the steering wheel, to the chassis tuning, to the way it sounds on throttle, when you consider all that, you find a thorough approach to making a very enjoyable car. Its dynamics are likely the best of the front-driving sporty cars available. Bravo, Ford.